It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Ritchie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Good afternoon, Cougar Nation. It is a game day live from Boulder, Colorado, nearby Folsom Field, as BYU is getting ready tonight to take on the Colorado Buffaloes, a rematch of last December's Alamo Bowl. Kyle Ireland, Mitch Harper here in Boulder, Colorado, getting ready for tonight's game. Mitch, it's a different team than last season's BYU program. Also different on the Buff side of things. New quarterback, no Shiloh, no Shador, no Travis Hunter. But this Colorado team poses a threat to this BYU program, who's looking to stay undefeated on the road.
Yeah, BYU 3-0 this season. They're number 25 in the AP Top 25 poll, and the Cougars are riding high this season. And Colorado, on the meantime, is 2-2. I think still lacking a little bit of their identity as they continue to try to figure out, their offense. They've got Caden Salter as their quarterback. But this Colorado team is looking for a win over a Power 4 team, whereas BYU is looking to do what they did last season to Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. Remember, that was a dominant performance, 36-14. BYU won that game. But to your point, Kyle, they are different teams, but philosophically, there are a lot of similarities between these two teams and programs coming up tonight. Again, kickoff tonight is at 8:15 p.m. We will have extended pregame at 6 o'clock from here in Boulder to get you ready for the Cougs and the Buffs. And as we dive into this matchup, Kyle, I think I look at this game and I see that BYU is a team that right now I believe is playing with a lot of confidence. The messaging this week from coaches and players after being ranked in the AP Top 25 poll, they're not even batting an eye to that, commentary and that ranking, because they know they have to stay humble, because they still know that as long as it took to get in the AP Top 25, a moment of weakness, they will fall out instantly, because we know BYU has a very thin margin for error. But I feel pretty good about where this team's at going into this game.
Yeah, and one of the things that I feel like I've heard personally from Colorado fans this week, Mitch, is they're looking at BYU as a team that hasn't played anybody. There's this mindset coming from the Buffs, in my opinion, from what I've seen and heard and read, that, hey, this BYU team, they haven't proven anything yet. And to some degree, that's true. But this BYU team, and particularly the defense, has shown, the caliber of a team they are. I thought that East Carolina win a week ago, there was a little bit of, nervousness about maybe the offense finding some rhythm, clicking, and they put that to bed in the second half in particular last week, as they just put on a rout against the Pirates and rolled late in that game. But I do think that I'm looking to see a balanced approach from BYU tonight. We heard Kalani Sitake last week on Monday talking about how, this Bear Bachmeier-led offense is really not led by a true freshman anymore. Bear now with 3 games under his belt. And Aaron Roderick talked about, the level and competition stepping up this week. And so I think they're going to have to, take the training wheels off, so to speak. Whereas, Aaron Roderick even admitted the first 2 games of this season, they didn't need to throw the ball to win those games. They were able to run, and they used L.J. Martin to pull away in victories against Stanford and Portland State. But I think that BYU is going to be a really balanced team this season, and I look to see how BYU does as far as being able to run the ball against the Colorado team tonight.
57500. You can get on board with us and interact with us today throughout the show. We'll be on the air up until 3 p.m. And again, we'll have extended pregame at 6. We want to ask you this, Cougar Nation. What side of the ball is most important for BYU today? Is it the offense or is it the defense, and why? 57500. What side of the ball is most important for the Cougars today in this game? And it's an interesting thought, because for BYU, they've been very balanced. They're one of the most balanced teams in college football this year. And then to the commentary of Colorado fans and maybe some media saying, well, who has BYU played? It's a fair criticism. BYU's non-conference schedule was weak. They took care of business, though, and hammered those teams. This wasn't like BYU was in the non-conference schedule having close calls. BYU crushed these teams. They were only a touchdown favorite last week against East Carolina. They win by 21. BYU is a really good football team. I think the question is, how good is BYU truly? Could they be a Big 12 title contender? Last night we saw Arizona State come back and beat TCU. Arizona State's off to a 2-0 start in the Big 12. They're looking great so far. BYU starts its Big 12 journey tonight, but BYU's really balanced, and I think it begs the question of what side of the ball is more important, offense or defense, tonight in this matchup against the Buffs?
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, Mitch, I'm looking at the defense to see if they can continue at their high level that they've played with so far this season. Guys like Keanu Tanavasa, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, even that safety group has been spectacular. And then you saw, on the outside, Evan Johnson had an amazing game last week with 2 interceptions and a pick 6. The thing that I'm looking for with the defense is Colorado has now solidified, so to speak, their quarterback position after kind of figuring out the mix between playing 3 quarterbacks so far this season. They've settled in on Caden Salter, and he's going to start for the second straight game tonight. I'm looking to see if BYU can contain him because I think that Colorado is going to utilize his legs a little bit more. That was something that I even thought they were going to do in the Alamo Bowl with Shadur Sanders. I thought that his mobility really was limited in that game, and he didn't have the opportunity to extend plays with maybe his athleticism like I thought. I expect to see more of that from Caden Salter tonight. And you look at Caden, he threw for 300 yards last week in their win over Wyoming. Can BYU limit that passing attack like they did against East Carolina, where they really shut down the Pirates through the air as well?
To me, I think BYU's offense has to shine tonight because I look at the defense. I know they're going to show up. I just know BYU's defense will show up tonight.
Defense travels. That's the cliche, right?
It does, and I think it will show up tonight against Colorado. Colorado has some defensive lines, but I think it's the BYU offense that has to perform at a high level, and they need to be at their best. And I think there's opportunities in this matchup for BYU to really shine, particularly through the passing game. Bear Bachmeier, I think this is the game passing the football. He was great last week against East Carolina. The efficiency, particularly in the second half, the accuracy, the ball placement. Thought Bear had his best half of football last week against East Carolina. But I think this week there could be more opportunities for some great play from Bear. You look at Colorado's defense, passing yards allowed, they're 79th in the country, 214.8 yards per game through the air. And that goes along with a rush defense that is one of the worst in college football, the Buffs are, 121st nationally. And I look at the passing attack for BYU because BYU, as it's been documented this week, and we'll get to the injury updates coming up a little bit later in depth, but Sione Moa is out this week. He suffered an injury last week in the East Carolina game. He's a scratch this week. So there's not much depth after L.J. Martin in the ground attack. And to me, I look at Bear Bachmeier. This could be a game where he shines through the air and puts up some big numbers in the passing game. And I think that offense has to be on point for BYU. We're live from Boulder, KSL News Time, 12:17 p.m. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland with you, getting you ready for BYU and Colorado. Big 12 lid lifter for BYU. We'll talk more about the Cougs and the Buff and what Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, is saying about BYU next here on KSL News Radio.